Happy Maple Leafs Elimination Day, everybody. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. It's a rite of spring. Well, actually, no, it's been more of a rite of winter for a lot of years. But ever since Toronto got some decent players, at least some decent regular season players, they've been able to get into the playoffs, at which point they embarrass themselves in a way that they never could if they would just miss the playoffs entirely. But this is now their new thing. Not losing, of course, that's an old thing. It's never appropriate to say that the Maple Leafs haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. The correct phrasing on that is that the Maple Leafs haven't made it to a Stanley Cup final since 1967. Those black and white photos should remind you of a day when the NHL had only 6 teams in the league. 6 teams. Like you have more of that in a beer league on a Sunday night. There were 6 teams in the league. The following season was the first in which the NHL doubled in size from 6 to 12, including, of course, adding the expansion Pittsburgh franchise. That's what it took for those guys to win. As far as I'm concerned, they've never won a Stanley Cup. They count 13. I count 0. My show. Watching them go down, and especially going down the way they did last night, as meekly as they did to the Panthers, and just getting dominated, utterly dominated. You can look at the final score, the 6-1 if you choose. I prefer that over the first 2 periods of this game, that the Panthers had 75 official shot attempts. Process that for a moment. 75 shot attempts in 40 minutes. That's 2 shot attempts almost per minute. You can't pull that off in a morning skate, okay? You can't pull that off like even if the other team dressed an emergency. Oh, there I go again. I gotta stop that. This Toronto team has one thing in common with its recent predecessors. Actually, a couple things in common. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, both of whom in some form or other are expected to either be extended in Toronto, which would be great news for the remainder of the Eastern Conference, or allowed to sign elsewhere for $1 bazillion, because a lot of regular season goals in Matthews' case and a lot of regular season assists in Marner's case are going to get you paid somewhere, because there's always a team or multiple teams that value that commodity. That's understandable. But at the very real risk of pounding a drum that doesn't need to be pounded, my goodness, Kyle Dubas, stay away from these people. You should know better than anybody that they're radioactive when it comes to games that matter. They might be the 2 most radioactive players anywhere in the NHL when it comes to playoffs. I know there's a connection. I know there's a need for additional scoring in Pittsburgh. I know that every coach everywhere is convinced that they can bring out the best in anybody, no matter how much they tend to shrink from bigger tasks. I also know that Craig Berube took over in Toronto this year. If Berube can't make a tough guy out of you, the man who here in Philadelphia, I'm here to cover baseball, was known as the Chief, principally because of tribal warfare that he'd commit on people. If he can't make you tough, you have no hope. Guess what? They have no hope. They're going to be cute goal scorers and setup people and behind the back passes, and basically, this is going to sound really mean, but glorified versions of Trevor Zegras in Anaheim. And you know exactly what I'm referring to when I say that. I'm not interested in that in Pittsburgh. I'm not. I don't have a problem with Dubas going and spending money. He has money. I don't have a problem with Dubas investing the considerable trade capital that he's accumulated into, top shelf players. But I love the idea that he put forth in his end of season press conference that the Penguins are going to be looking still for players who are in that age range, that 23, 24, 25 sweet spot. Why? So that they can grow together, so that they can challenge each other as peers, and so that when that day comes that, not just Evgeny Malkin, not just Chris Letang, but who isn't around anymore, you've still got this bank of players, and you've still got a group that can, look, they're all not going to make it. They all didn't make it out of the first wave back when Sid first came in. But some of them are. And the more of those numbers that you have, the better it is. Go ahead and use those assets in that way. Go ahead and acquire players using cap space, using draft picks, third-round picks, whatever it is. Get them in here. Get them in here while Sid's still doing his Sid things. But this, going and getting, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. No thanks. No thanks to any Maple Leafs. Thanks, on the other hand, to the Florida Panthers. And congrats to all 4 of the conference finalists. It'll now be Florida versus Carolina on this side of the bracket, and it'll be Dallas and Edmonton on the other. Is anybody really, really, really picking against the defending champs? When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Trent, and it's really not a Q. It's lengthy, but I feel like it's representative to a few of you. I wouldn't say it was too many, but a few of you who really took exception to my stance the most recent show Friday that Marc-Andre Fleury should not have his number retired in the PPG Paints Arena rafters. And I did, for anybody who missed it, look, I'm not about to say anything bad about him or whatever. He just, he spent a lot of his career elsewhere. And my main point was that if you look up there and you see that there are only 3 numbers, 21 of the late Michel Briere tragically died, that's respected. And the other 2 are Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr. I mean, you'd better really be something, okay? All right. And in fairness to Jagr, spent a lot of his career elsewhere too, but Jagr and Fleury are not comparable players, respectfully. I'm going to use that word a lot here. Here's Trent's rebuttal. DK, I could not respectfully, he says it too, disagree with you more here. Marc-Andre Fleury absolutely deserves to get his number retired, as does Chris Letang. If this was any other franchise, this would not even be a serious question, nor should it be with the Penguins. Your rationale, and I've heard it used by a lot of fans too, is inaccurate. The reason the Penguins have so few numbers retired isn't because they have a high bar. Rather, it's reflective that they've been a boom or bust franchise. The Penguins were a laughingstock pre-Mario. There was nothing worth celebrating in the Lemieux until the Lemieux era. And in that period, Lemieux and Jagr starred and got retired. Nobody else did, because aside from Ron Francis, nobody was around long enough. Mark Recchi, Kevin Stevens, Paul Coffey, Larry Murphy, maybe Tom Barrasso, but there are reasons why he isn't honored. You bet there are. The idea that the all-time winning goaltender, who was part of 3 cup teams and a defenseman who's going to play close to 20 years here, don't get retired because the Penguins have this high bar, is ridiculous. And it's telling, okay, all right, you've gone on too long here. I get it. here's my last respectfully back to you. Respectfully, no, you're wrong. It is about the high bar, okay? This isn't like comparing it to other franchises. Want to know why? The Penguins aren't other franchises. The Penguins have won 5 Stanley Cups in a little more than a half a century. That's incredible. Look at the history of the National Hockey League and find how many teams were that successful. Then find how many teams have had the scoring champions that they have, the Hart trophies, the Art Ross trophies. And then from there, look at all the supporting cast guys that you're throwing out. And I understand there's some recency bias in this. And tell me how they'd compare, including Barrasso, by the way. Listen, Barrasso was a jerk with people like me. I don't count. I don't matter. What does matter is that the people who played with him swear by him. So you didn't have to throw that in there for Barrasso. Would I want to see his number up there? No. But again, I'm irrelevant in this. Ask yourself where Fleury's contributions to the franchise rank with, say, that of Ron Francis, since you brought him up. Francis's contributions to the 91 and the 92 Stanley Cups, both of them, were enormous. And they were bigger than any contributions that Flower had to the 3 in which he was involved. Flower won in 2009. Flower got the first couple of rounds, the tougher rounds to his credit, in 2017. Flower, before those couple of years, really struggled in the playoffs, going back to my conversation here in the opening segment. He was that guy who would look great in the regular season and fall apart in the playoffs. We all love to forget that now. But then, on top of all that, he was traded. 0 fault of his own. 0. But it happened. And then he went to Las Vegas. And then he went to, was he in Chicago first before he ended up in, I think that sounds right. He was in Chicago for like a cup of coffee and then went up to St. Paul, and he's played out the rest of his career there. And he's been saluted and honored and recognized and appreciated and every other honor that he could possibly have received everywhere he's been. Here's how I look at this. I'm going to make this a whole lot simpler. You look up in those rafters, and again, with the exception, the obvious exception of Briere, who didn't have a chance to become great because he was killed in a car accident as a rookie. If you look at Lemieux and Jágr, you can assume that those are the 2 best players who are eligible for such an honor in franchise history. Very, very, very safe to say. Who's your 3rd best player in franchise history? Well, it's going to be Jágr because Sid is your 2nd best player. Who's your 4th best player in franchise history? It's Gino, and Gino's going to be up there, and deservedly so. All right. Is Flower the 5th best player in franchise history? Answer just that, yes or no, and you've got your answer. I appreciate the question. I appreciate the feedback from you and from everybody on this subject, and we'll be back with another one of these shows tomorrow.